Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Horn Call podcast. My name is James Bolden. I'm the IHS Publications editor and the host. As you may know, recently, one of the great figures in the 20th century for horn playing, Hermann Baumann, passed away. I first heard a recording of Hermann Baumann when I was in high school, just a very young and up-and-coming horn player. Really didn't know much about anything, but I did manage to get my hands on a recording of Baumann playing the Glière Concerto and the Chabrier Larghetto and a few other things, and that recording I still have to this day, and I still think fondly of it and listen to it whenever I get the chance. Our discussion today is unique. It's a panel with several people who studied with Baumann over the years. There are several generations represented here. They studied with him, they knew his playing, they knew his personality, and it's really an opportunity for us to kind of look back over Baumann's very distinguished career and just think about and reflect on the influence and impact that he's had in the horn playing community and over the musical world in general. He was more than just a horn player, and I think truly, the best artists on any instrument are they transcend their instrument, and I think that's certainly the case. Our guests today on the panel are Ab Koster, Joseph Ognibene, Justin Sharp, and J. Bernardo Silva. And these are names that are probably familiar to all of you. Ab Koster, a very well-known European horn player, originally born in Holland, but has worked quite a bit in Germany as a performer and teacher. J. Bernardo Silva, of course, is the vice president of the International Horn Society and a well-known international soloist based in Portugal. Joseph Ognibene of the Iceland Symphony Orchestra and has been there for many, many years. Very, very cool to chat with him and learn about his relationship and his time spent with Hermann Baumann. And then Justin Sharp, originally from Texas in the United States, studied with Baumann in Germany just before Baumann had his stroke in '93, and also was studying with him after. So he had a unique perspective being in that horn class in Essen, both before and after Baumann's stroke. And then he mentions in his discussion about getting back in touch with Hermann over the years. They stayed in touch, but really getting to know him better in his later years, helping him with his web presence and just making sure that his legacy is preserved. So this is a very special episode of the Horn Call podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. As I mentioned in the email setting this up, it would be lovely for everyone to just briefly introduce themselves and maybe talk a little bit about your relationship or connection to Hermann Baumann, and maybe we'll just kind of go from there. So whoever would like to start first, just maybe raise your hand and we'll go.
Well, I'll go.
Okay, Joe, go for it. Yeah.
I met Hermann in 1975 in my hometown in Claremont, California. He came over for the Claremont Music Festival. I was just a teenager. I guess I was 18 years old. And it's just one of those life-changing moments. I got to know him pretty well during the week. He had some days off, and I took him and Hella around Los Angeles. I had a driver's license at that time already, so I took him around to the beach, to the Hollywood Bowl, and Mexican restaurants, and got to know him quite personally, nice, and of course, I played for him. I had a good lesson, and I had the idea that maybe I'd like to go study with him. As soon as I heard him play one note, I knew that I had to go study with him. So I learned German really quick, a couple of years, and then arranged when I was 19. I went over, and this would have been 1977 to Essen. Stayed that 1 year, 77 to 78, and then I went back to the States, and then I went back in 81, and he was in Stuttgart at that time, and then he actually hooked me up with the job I have right now in Iceland Symphony. He recommended me to go for a trial, and I've been here ever since, and I maintained good contact with him and Hella all through the years. I consider the family dear friends.
Lovely. Thank you, Joe. Who would like to go next? Okay, Ab.
Yeah. Oh, so I met him the first time in it must have been 1971. I heard him first playing on the radio in Holland. I was 20 years old, or still 19, I guess. And I was studying at the conservatory in The Hague, and I was already in the Symphony Orchestra of The Hague as a third horn assistant first. And I heard his playing with the Danzig Concerto. He made the recording with Jaap Schreuder, his Concerto Amsterdam. This was one of his first recordings, I guess. And it was so beautiful and so different than other horn players I heard, that I was really very happy to have the possibility to meet him. I had a teacher for chamber music, that was Franz Vester, and he was very close to Hermann Baumann, making recordings that time in Amsterdam. So he said, I'm recording the flute concertos of on the Traverso for Teldec, I guess it was that time. And if you want to meet Hermann, you should come to Amsterdam, and I will introduce you to him. So I went there, and I was very shy, and he was standing there, very, very standing, like he was, big personality. I said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to have lessons of you, if it's possible." And what do you want to learn? Do you want to learn solo playing, orchestra playing? Do you want to learn more of the instrument? Do you want to learn about literature? I said, "I only want to be a better horn player, Okay. So what you should do, I play the day after tomorrow, I play Gelsenkirchen, Strauss number 2, and you can come if you like." And so I took the Beetle Volkswagen of my father, and I went there. And he was very surprised that I came, because he thought, yes, he will not come, So, and from that time, we had a very good connection. And he took me as his private student, and I went there every 2 weeks. And afterwards, he took me in the conservatory, but because I had already a job, it was it was so that I could not go only in the conservatory all the time, only for the concert examination, and I did that there. And well, I got a place in 1977 as first horn in the Radio Symphony of Hamburg, and that was very close to the village where he lived and where he was born. It was the other side of the river Elbe. So I had a very good connection with his family also. And also when he came to look for his family, he always visited me. And when he played in Holland, I still had a house in Holland at that time. He always came to stay with me. So that was a great time. And the first time I remember he played Glière Concerto. He started doing this a lot of times in the whole world. But I think the first time was in the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. And he stayed with me. And he was in a real Russian shape, He had a hat on like the Russians have, and a big coat of fur like the Russians had, and he was going with my dog through the streets there, and I thought, who is this? Like a Russian. And I felt he was in that mood already. So, and that was a great concert too. And the most impressive thing was that Strauss concerto I heard him the first time. It was overwhelming, and it was different than all very good horn players. There are a lot of good horn players, but he was different of that because I think it was his personality. It was not that he had more technique than other horn players, but the personality he had and the way he played, like singing on the horn, was unique. And the possibility of have always different sounds for different pieces. Mm-hmm. So he used different mouthpieces. He used a lot of descant horn, which was not usual at that time, and still is not usual in Germany. Everybody plays here Alexander 103, So the sound's always the same of everybody. And he made a lot of different things with the discount horn, and with he played on the Paxman, he played on the Alexander, he played on the Cruise, and he always was choosing the horns for the pieces he did at that time, which was great, I think. So I think that was the biggest thing of his personality, that he was different than only a technical, very good horn player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Ab.
For me, it was I was a big fan. You know, I started to learn the horn in '92, and I remember the first time I saw a CD from him was this one, the Grande Chasse de Saint-Ouvert, and for me it was I never thought that the horn could play this kind of music, the chasse in a CD or in a concert. So for me, before I just listened to Mozart concerti and this kind of music more classic and polite, and so to really listen someone playing with like Ab said, a lot of character, and playing the music, the chasse music, like playing with the soul, like playing romantic music. For me, it was really incredible. And I got obsessed with him. I bought everything about him, and for me it was like that. I had a goal to study with him and to meet him and to listen him playing in live. So I was from the start trying to collect money from small concerts or so, and looking for opportunity to meet him. And I think it was '95. He came to Lisbon to play a concert, and in that concert he played the Strauss number 1 and Mozart number 1. And I was 16, and my parents were very nice, and I took a bus to Lisbon 4 hours overnight, just alone, and to meet him. And I didn't knew at that time that he had the stroke. So I was, of course, the concert was fantastic, and but I was expecting like a recording, and it was different in that moment. But in the end of the concert, I met him, and it was really nice, and he gave me autograph, and we took some pictures. And a few months after, I went to a master class in Prague, and after when I arrived, I told him that I had a recording from the concert in Lisbon, because the concert was broadcast from the radio, and he asked me to have the recording, and I gave him, and he was really thankful, because he wanted to listen how was his shape in that moment. And for me, it was really incredible to see someone, with his level and with his career, to be so humble, and trying to improve, and really trying to listen what he can do better. And every time I listened him after, I could see that it was getting better and more in shape, and improving his skills after what he suffered. So that experience really inspired me more, even more. I was not always, I was not concerned about the mistakes because it's normal. We are horn players. We know all about that. But the character and this kind of strength about starting again and trying to improve, and that age is really inspiring. So we had this relation. Funny because I was this guy that recorded everything, the master classes, the concerts, the recitals in the radio, and I gave him some material, and every time he sent me more material of his own. So I have collected really nice stuff, and after some master classes, some private lessons in Germany, in Spain. Also, I have the opportunity to invite him to be here in Portugal with Ab Koster too, and we spent some fantastic days. And after, it was so pleased with the view and the weather that he asked me, I want to stay 1 week more. And I was like, what? Yes, I want to be here 1 week more. And I asked to the hotel if it was possible. They have the room available, and he stayed there. Just in every day, he was waking up and taking a hike, like just around the sea and enjoying life. It was really, really nice.
Thank you, Bernardo. And Justin.
Yes, my name's Justin Sharp, and I'm from Texas. And I was in Texas when I, for the first time, heard some of his recordings. The band director at the time was also a horn player, and I was doing well in the UIL competitions in Texas. And so he told me later he just wanted to see what I could do. So he plopped the notes down to the Weber concertino and just said, "Okay, kid, let's see what you can do." And I didn't have a recording. And so I drove to Austin and Tower Records, second story, and started flipping through, the little shoebox kind of style. So there with all the under horn, and it was just kept on Hermann Baumann, Hermann Baumann, Hermann Baumann, Hermann Baumann. And then I finally found it, Weber concertino. And so I got that and started listening and just fell in love with that. And so that was always my dream. And then I went to Indiana University to study undergraduate, and I was very, very fortunate because I had two people who had direct contact with him, Leonard Håkansson, which is on the recording with the Czerny and the Shook and Rossini, and that's one of my favorite albums. And I got to work with Håkansson, and I actually got to play the Czech with Håkansson playing, and I felt like, oh my gosh, it sounds, it's like very close, and so I fell in love with that. And then I took privately with Philip Farkas, and to make it real short, it didn't look like it was going to work out, but then they managed to get contact, and between the two of them, Hermann accepted me, and so I auditioned, and he says, "You're going to have to then come to Germany, to Essen, to the Folkwang Hochschule," and I said, "Okay," and I had no idea where that was, in Germany, and so I quickly left and looked that up, and about that time, Bernardo, the recording of the Hubertus Messe just came out, and it was all hunting music, and I got that CD and I put it on the stereo And I was just blown away. And I was even more blown away because I knew he told me, get that album because you're going to be playing with all of those players. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I showed up, could barely speak German. And I studied with him from 91 to 95. And then I stayed there in Essen-Werden and lived there and worked there as a freelancer for many, many years. And so Hermann lives just one village over, and in Kettwig. And so we would run into each other occasionally, probably maybe sometimes even just once a year, but always just hello, and it was good. And it wasn't until later on, much later on, he had his, well, I have to back up with the stroke. He had his stroke. I was there in the class with him, and we lived through that. And that is exactly right. Bernardo's kind of put that into perspective very, very well, in the sense that he came back and he worked, and that was it just was the new thing for him to do. And he worked on himself, and he worked on himself and worked on himself. And I remember watching the comeback concert in the Folkwang Hochschule where he played, and it was phenomenal. I mean, and he full stroke, and I witnessed that, and then having seen him come back and master the horn again and be on the stage, and it was just phenomenal. And so we played concerts together still. And I was watching one thing. We were doing a lot of Hubertus Messe, and we were. This was while I was still studying. I was watching him in rehearsals, and also just privately, and we would go on tour. And there was one night we played a concert in Hamburg, and it was after the concert. We were in the hotel lobby. Everybody had gone, and it was just the two of us, and we were about to turn in. And I said, "Can I ask you something?" And I said, "I think I'm seeing something, but I'm not sure if I'm right. But can you feel the right hand side of your lip?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Can you feel the right hand side of your tongue?" And he said, "No." Because I could tell that when in rehearsals, there might be a stand here, and he would brush up against it and knock the stand over. He couldn't feel that. Mm. And then in rehearsals, when he was rehearsing, and I was on first horn, you could see where his glasses weren't behind his ear. Mm. And so I started analyzing that. So what he was doing, he not only made a comeback, but the left-hand side of his ansatz was guiding the right. I think that's just mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. The discipline that this man had. And so, yeah, I finished up my studies, and like I said, we saw each other just occasionally. But at one point, I started seeing that he didn't really have any kind of web presence, and nothing really to speak of. And so I made contact with him again, and I made some suggestions. He said, "You really need to create a presence again." One of the things that disturbed me very much was after the stroke, all of the pictures of him were not like we knew him, strong and present. And naturally, he had had a stroke, and he had suffered through that. And so one of my top goals was actually to recreate that. And so I made an appointment with a photographer whom I knew, and we went back in, and we got out the midnight blue tuxedo, which, by the way, fit still so many years later perfectly. First try. and then we reshot photos, and those are the older photos that you see now. And so during this time, I got to be very close with him, fortunately, simply by doing interviews and trying to work with him on his web presence. And then we went to Russia together to perform with Javier Bonet, also Oxford, and where he was then conducting, and Javier Bonet was playing Mozart concertos. And so it was a very fortunate time, and I was able to spend a lot of time with him and Andreas. And so yeah, that was my time.
Well, thank you all for that. And it's interesting, the different generations, different countries, different continents, even, yet there's this thread of just his inspiring playing, and then in addition to the playing, the personality and the character that goes along with it. So you guys were generous enough to share some moments about his performing career and teaching. Were there moments maybe of levity that you remember? Did he crack jokes? Did he I know, having met very, very celebrated players and things, it sometimes makes you a little anxious or nervous to meet this person you've only encountered through their recordings or nowadays on YouTube or video. Did he realize the importance that he had, and did I guess I'm asking, did he help you feel comfortable in lessons or when you were meeting him? You said, Ab, I think it was when you first met him, he said, "What do you want?" But maybe that was his way of maybe cutting through the tension a little bit.
I think so. He was not a person which you can make very low degrees jokes, like musicians do a lot of them, to each other. So he was not that kind of man. He was serious, and his humor was also high standard, And he was always serious in his way of doing, and everything he went right to the point, and he was always going to a point. It was not so like this. and also when you were talking with him, his eyes were also very strong, pointing to you. He was a very strong personality. And I said to him once, I think when you would not have been a great horn player, or very famous horn player, you would have done something else, and you would have also been famous, probably like a politician, I don't know. And he said, no, not politician, but conductor. I would have been a very good conductor. That's what I guess. That's true. There's one story I wanted to tell you is a little bit funny. Is that the Ligeti trio was written for him, and Gavrilov and the piano player, I don't know his name anymore, but they did the first concert, the Uraufführung. They did in Bergerdorf, which is a place not far from my house here, very close to where he grew up, and. I was the Ligeti who wrote a trio, so okay. And he said, do you come to the concert? Yes, I will come to the concert. And at the afternoon, the telephone called, and he said, I'm here. And we play the Ligeti before the interval, but after the interval, we played Brahms trio, And I just come from Copenhagen, and I don't have the score with me. I forgot it. Can you give me the score? I said, yes, of course. So I went with my score of the Brahms very quickly to Bergerdorf and gave it to him. He said, yes, of course I can play it from memory, but it's not so safe with new people. So they did not even have a big rehearsal, because the only thing they rehearse before a lot of times is Ligeti, which is very difficult, as we know all. And the Brahms they had to do also, so it was not very serious. and he didn't even have the score. And I thought this was very funny because there was Helmut Schmidt, the Chancellor was in the public, and Ligeti himself. Was a very important concert in a small hall in a small town. But it was an important thing, and this is something I will not forget. That I run there with the brass horns. It was very funny to me. Yeah, it was some memories with. And when you ask me what is for me the best recordings, there are a lot of. They are all good, but what I love the most is a couple of them, and some of them you can't even find on Spotify, not anymore, and never you can find them. It's the Schuck Concertino, which I love very much. Beautiful playing, and the concert, the CD. It's not even a CD. It's a platte with horn and organ, which is with Tagezi, which he plays Corelli and Telemann and the first, which is a fantastic recording. And I found it in Japan as a CD. And I never found it in Europe as a CD. So I bought two of them and sent them one for his birthday. And now I put it on my YouTube channel 2 years ago. And I telephoned him and said, Herman, I put your horn and organ on my YouTube channel because you cannot find it anymore. And then he said, where can I find it? He said, on the internet. He said, then you have to talk to Andreas. And Andreas came, and I said to Andreas, it's on the internet. We don't have internet. What? You don't have internet? No, we don't need it. Okay. I said, do you have a smartphone? Yes, I have a smartphone. I said, then you have internet. And I was looking, I sent him the link on his smartphone by WhatsApp. And then Herman could also see that the CD was in the internet, but he did not know how to find it, I feel very bad about that. But I had a good feeling that I put it in the world again, because it's so fantastic recording. And the same with Schuck, but I don't have a CD of Schuck, but I have the recording still, so probably I find this possibility to digitize it and put it on the internet. This is also fantastic recording of the Schuck concert. So that's something which comes in my mind at the moment.
Oh yeah, that's great. Thank you, Bernardo. It looked like you were reaching for something. What you got there? Oh, you're muted.
Oh. It was me. I was looking for the Schuck. I guess I don't have it either.
Bernardo's got the '98 horn call, which was dedicated. To,
it is Hermann's greatest time for me. Maybe it's just because this is when I knew him. Was between 70 and 80. The recordings that he did then were just for me the quintessential Baumann. He was just unparalleled. Starting with these, the Bach recordings, and of course the Weber, the Schumann. That was the very first LP of him that I found. Schumann, Schuck, Weber. The horn and organ recording that Ab is talking about is just some of the best, most musical playing. The Handel arrangement that's on that is the first thing I heard him play live, and it just this sound wave knocked me off my chair. It's just one of these moments that you just will never forget. He played it actually with the string orchestra. He had another arrangement of that. The Schuck. He was always thinking about the Schuck. He had special fingerings. He rewrote part of it to make it less tiring, and he actually gave me the music for that, and I think we published it in one of the horn calls. It was a alternate version of how to play. I think it was in the last moment that he rewrote some stuff. You were asking about humor, and the typical you say about Germany. In Germany, laughing humor is no laughing matter. But he was a serious man. But there were moments when, if you tickled him just right, he would almost go into a silly little laugh. His voice went up an octave, and he was. It was always there. I always thought of him as a little bit of a Till Eulenspiegel type, really, underneath all this austere, serious. He loved. He always said one of the worst criticism he could have in the lessons, if you were playing something, he would say, "Das ist nicht lustig." That was just the worst thing he could say to you if you were playing Till Eulenspiegel or something scherzando, and it just wasn't short enough, or when nicht lustig. He had an ear for that. He wanted music to be fun, as well as romantic, and when he wasn't singing his heart out, then he was being quite humorous in his music making. Ab was talking about his appetite for different instruments, and I remember once in a lesson, I was playing the Hindemith sonata, and the first phrase, it's a long phrase, and I breathed in the middle, and it's 8 bars, but very slow, and I breathed after four bars, and then I carried on, and he said, it would be better if you wouldn't breathe. And I said, well, yeah, I'm kind of running out of air. And then I was playing, at the time I just come to Germany. I had a big instrument, a big Con 8D with a big mouthpiece. And, the air was just going through it. And then he took my horn with my big mouthpiece, took a breath, and he played the whole thing. Just, 8 bars, him used to his, Alexander and a small mouthpiece. And he said, you see, you can do it. I think you also asked whether we always ever felt nervous being around him. You would think that you would feel nervous around a man like that, but for some reason, how we structured the class, we were always playing for each other. We were playing for our peers. It was the most critical audience you could imagine, and to tell you the truth, I don't ever remember being nervous. I've been nervous since then in my career, but in those days, studying in that class and playing for him, playing for the other students, there was just such an atmosphere. Everybody was in it together, and he himself. Imagine playing for your students all the time. He would come by the school and just pick us up for a ride along and take us to wherever he was going, and nearby in the Ruhrgebiet, or if it was within an hour or two, he would just show up in his Mercedes late afternoon and say, "Hey, anyone want to come? I'm playing Britten Serenade in Bochum." And yes, please, And that particular night, the Britten Serenade in Bochum, this would have been 1978. And it was absolutely perfect from the beginning to the end. And just magical, absolutely magical. And I asked him out on the way home, on the drive home, I said, you have all these recordings. A lot of them are, you don't really go past Mozart or Brahms. There's, missing stuff. We don't have a recording of Strauss and Britten. He said, Britten, there's a lot of English recordings. Britten ist ein Insel. There's a lot of British recordings. They let them have that one, he said. So he wasn't going to record it. And he said, but Strauss, I'm working on that. I am talking to people about that. And of course, the idea, I think, had already come that he would do it with Kurt Masur. And he sure did a wonderful recording of that later. So it's interesting how he structured his recording itinerary through the 70s and into the 80s, and until he had a stroke. The music kept getting more serious, and he revisited some repertoire, of course, also. Always experimenting with different horns. He wasn't afraid of big belled horns. Wasn't afraid of using the descant. Well, obviously wasn't afraid of natural horns. The wonderful stuff he did there. Mm-hmm. But I say, for my taste, and again, just because this is how I heard him the first time, how he sounded on the Alexander B high F horn, whether it was the high F side or the B flat. He really, the 107, and he really, my God, he could sing on that horn. It was just, and it's a rather small horn, it's limited, but he really he squeezed every ounce of sound out of it, and it was just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And then later, when I was with him, he was already experimenting with triple horns. He had some Paxmans. He was playing a new design by Alexander, a triple horn. He sounded wonderful on that. The Tiber recording. He did when I was studying with him, the Mozart concertos, I think with Salzburg, he did on that horn. Always experimenting. He was fickle with horns. I think that's what was Engelbert Schmidt told me. Yeah, der Baumann he's a little fickle. He wouldn't stay long with any one particular horn. He was always looking for something new, something different. And but for me, the 70s. So all of the recordings he made there. These Concerto Amsterdam, the sound is so wonderful. One thing I would like to ask, maybe Ab knows this because from Holland, a little more information on these recordings, Concerto Amsterdam. I knew Jaap Schröder, but he didn't tell me much about the recordings. It would be great to know a little bit about that. Also, I would like to know if anyone knows. Hermann did some mucke, some gigs. In around the area, he played some of those incredible recordings of Haydn symphonies with Antal Dorati and the Philharmonia Hungarica. If anybody knows anything about that, it would be interesting to hear that.
No, I don't know that.
I don't know. I did want to pick up on a few things that Joe had mentioned, and also about the humor. And so, Ab was exactly right. Baumann was not someone you could crack colorful jokes around. And so that was, but he did have his humor. And the thing that I believe that made him so interesting as a player, and also where you could feel all of the different emotions through his playing, I believe he had extremely good contact with his emotions. I mean, when he was happy, he was almost childlike, and it was really quite sometimes even strange, but he was quite childlike. When he was sad, he was almost instantly sad. And if it was something that really touched him, he'd quickly wipe a tear away. And if he got mad, he was mad. And it was, for me, I always felt like that was perhaps one of the reasons why he just seemed to be extremely close to those raw emotions on all those spectrums, and then to the horns also, because Joe has done an extensive interview with Hermann about all of his horns. But that was also something in the horn class that was just amazing, because yes, it was encouraged that the other students would sit in on your lessons, and probably I learned more sitting and watching other people's lessons because you weren't in the hot seat, right? So you could really watch. And one of the things that he did all the time, especially on the Strauss or the Mozart concertos, was he would be listening, and on his knee he would be fingering along. So he was practicing. He was just simply working on the memorization, keeping everything fresh while the student was playing. So I found that always interesting. But he was quite a chameleon, and with the horns, if he wasn't playing on a horn at that point in time, he would say, "Okay, here. You can practice on this horn for the next week, and when I come back, I'll need that horn, but then I can give you this other horn." So I too, like Joe, showed up with Con 8D, and so I had a lot to learn there. So it was the first time actually with an Alexander and many of these horns, and it was a fantastic time. The only thing that you had to do is that if you used one of his horns, you had to give it back to him polished. Heaven help you if you didn't. And because he only, for the most part, he only played unlacquered horns. And so that meant that you had to sit down and we would have puts sessions, so polishing sessions before we would go on tour with the Hubertus Messe and all of the horns, because he would give us, his horns, and we would have to polish all of those horns. And it was like that first rehearsal before we went on tour, he would inspect everything, right? Mm-hmm. And also one last thing, which was actually quite interesting, and it was my segue into natural horn, and that was with the recording of the Hubertus Messe, because the original setting was with I believe 8 valved horns and 8 natural horns, and so I was beginning with the valve horn, and then some of the older players like Wilhelm Bruns and Oliver Kersken and Michel and Bean, they all were playing, but they already had positions. So they were playing on the natural horns. And so when they all went away, one day we just showed up and there were all these natural horns in the studio room, and he just started handing them out. Here. And Svankrit Friedrichsdottir from Iceland, and also Sasha Hermann, we just looked at each other and said, we've never played natural horns before. We don't know how to do this. And he says, you will learn. And so we did.
Those are lovely stories. So I kind of have, like I said, we could go for 4 or 5 more hours, but I'm trying to be respectful of all of your time. And again, thank you so much for doing this. Was there, aside from the horn playing, was there a piece of advice that he gave you at some point, either in terms of life or your career in music, that you really find yourself still using, or that you was quite impactful to you? Or it could be advice for horn playing, either.
Well, I think for me, it was just his drive before the stroke and after the stroke. He dropped out of his bed I heard this from Andreas. He would drop literally out of his bed onto the floor and start doing 45 minutes worth of exercises to keep the right hand side of his body from freezing up. And that was always a challenge. But just the sheer strength of this man and the determination, and that was inspirational for me, just to see that drive up until the very end. And he lived to be on that stage, mm-hmm. and that was where he was comfortable.
I want to be in the middle. When you were sitting around a table with 7 or 8 people, he was the middle of everything, always. You know what I mean? So he was not sitting apart, and he was the time before his stroke. After his stroke, he was a little bit different as he was before. What was a very positive thing also about his character is that he never spoke bad about colleagues. He was always respectful for other players, and not like you hear many players around who are telling bad stories about other horn players, and he never did that. That was very. I think that was very noble, mm-hmm. of his character.
Yeah, and that's unspoken, but also very good, excellent advice. Just leading by example and not speaking ill. Yeah.
He was a very noble person.
Yes.
I remember just being in the foyer or the entrance of the conservatory, and before his stroke, and he walked in the front door, and I remember even violinists kind of standing back paying attention, and said, "There's the Baumann." So there's Baumann, and he just it was a presence. And it was just who he was.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And a beautiful voice. He always was thinking with one player about singing. And I remember that he told me when he played that B minor Mass, and that was in the 70s. Afterwards, he didn't do that anymore, but he did it many times with Richter. And then when he played the solo, afterwards he went in the choir and he sang. He liked to sing the Mass till the end, you know. Normally you go away, he says, oh, so I played this 5 minutes and I go home, I take my horn, I go away. Now he went in the choir and he sang. That is very special because he adored that music, and his voice was also very good when he sang something. You know, he had a very good voice.
Yes. Both of his grandfathers on both sides were very, very well-known choral conductors. And Baumann himself, even at, I believe it was a very young age, was asked by one of the choirs there in Hamburg to be the choir conductor, and his brother was in the choir, and
his brother was a conductor either, Kort.
Yes,
he was the medical doctor like his father was.
Yes, and so he considered himself to be a singer first. He was a singer first, and even Andreas later, this was just a few years ago, confided it to me. The horn was just happened to be forgive me, but the megaphone for that. It was what he was going to be something with music one way or another. But he considered himself in the very first level to be a singer.
Yeah. Actually, it was the first shock, and I remember the first time I played for him. I was trying to play the Strauss first horn concerto, and I played for a couple of minutes, and he asked me to sing, and I was 13, and I never sung, you know. I was just playing the horn, and he told me that you always have to sing. You know, it's like with that kind of voice and character, you must have. I always sing, and I saw that I was in a course for a week, and he was always singing some part of a symphony or a concerto or something, and he told after he was saying that I could play the horn, I could play any instrument, but the main issue is about singing, because it's our soul. You have to transmit what is inside of you, and singing, and I think is actually what I feel when I listen to him, and even when we listen this. The first gift I received from him was the CD "Holiday for French Horn" that he recorded in Japan in a tour, and it has really simple pieces like the Sansa Le Cygne, or the Romance from Sansa, or Vocalise from Rachmaninoff, and it's really special to listen this virtuoso player to play these single pieces, really nice tunes like Green Sleeves from Britain, and with lots of character, and this vibrato that is really personal. And I remember I was studying with a teacher that almost was playing with vibrato was almost forbidden, you know, but outside the classroom, I was playing with lots of vibrato, because I felt that it was like, you know, it's is really coming from inside, from Baumann. We listen because when you listen the other players, the great ones from the violin, or we can listen to vibrato. So why not? We cannot play. Why is forbidden for brass players? And Baumann it gave that perspective that is nothing forbidden. There is no forbidden repertoire or horns or pieces or ways to express our feelings, our musicianship.
This has been a really fantastic discussion. It's amazing how fast this hour has gone by, but I want to thank you all so much for giving up some of your day to talk about this. Maybe a good place to end this is if there's any kind of final remarks talking about his legacy. And I know, one of my favorite things to do is to introduce my students to recordings and artists they may not know of, simply because they're too young or there's so much on the internet now. Chances are they would come across Hermann Baumann at some point, but maybe they haven't yet. So I, hand them a CD of Hermann Baumann or direct them to Ab's YouTube channel to listen to some Hermann Baumann. Javier Bonet has also put together some really nice tributes on YouTube to Hermann Baumann. But maybe if there's any final remarks you would like to share.
I agree with you completely that his medium was the LP. He just started making CDs, before he had a stroke. A lot of his best stuff is not available digitally, and that means that the younger generation just will never see it, will never hear it. And I'm always preaching. I'm always telling, every time I go to a horn workshop, I see younger people, I tell them about him, because yes, people are beginning to forget already, which is just, it's a scandal, really. I tell all of my students, I'm always giving them big talks about him and playing his recordings for them and pointing out to them that this is their legacy also. If they study with me, then they're in the Baumann dynasty. And we just have to keep it alive. We can maybe make an effort up, if you have this digital version of Shook, to find out a way to put it online so people can enjoy it. I
have the LP, but now there are, of course, there are machines you can make from the LP, digital version, and then I can put it on my channel. And I only put Hermann on my channel, and I'm not a channel for all horn players, I started to put my recordings there because for my students always ask, did you record this, did you play this? And I always made a CD, burning a CD. So I said, I make it on the YouTube channel. But for my students, that was the idea. But the thing for Hermann, I think it's the good thing to try to make it stay alive in the world. The recordings I like so very much. There are more, like you said, or LPs which are not known. And many of them, and which are not on CD. It's a shame. Of Philips or whatever, Teldec who doesn't do that, but probably it's too expensive, I don't know. But we have equipment also, we can do a little thing about it. Mm-hmm. We can try to make it on a YouTube channel, which is not very big thing, but it's so students can listen and so.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you all so much. And if this is an okay place to end the conversation, I'll do it there. Thank you so much.